The difference between winners and quitters is not talent. It's not intelligence. It's not luck. It's not motivation. It's one habit almost nobody talks about because it's boring, uncomfortable, and impossible to sell. And once you see it, you can't unsee why most people never make it. Here's the truth. Winners don't have better starts. They have better returns. They come back. Quitters don't. That's the habit. The habit of returning after resistance. Not restarting. Not rebranding. Not taking a break. Returning. Most people think quitting is a single decision. It's not. Quitting is a pattern. And it always starts the same way. You miss once, then twice. Then you tell yourself a story. I needed rest. I lost momentum. I'll restart properly later. That story feels reasonable. It's not. It's the moment the habit breaks. Winners don't avoid misses. They avoid turning misses into exits. That's the entire separation point. Here's why this habit matters more than anything else. Everyone misses. Everyone slips. Everyone loses rhythm. The moment that defines your future is not the slip. It's what you do next. Quitters disappear. Winners return. That's it. No drama. No speeches. No identity crisis. They just come back. Now let's talk about why this habit is so rare. Because returning feels worse than quitting. Quitting gives relief. Returning gives friction. When you quit, pressure disappears. Expectations vanish. You feel lighter. Returning does the opposite. It forces you to face the gap between intention and behavior. That gap hurts, so most people avoid it. They restart instead. Restarting feels clean, fresh, hopeful. Returning feels messy, unimpressive. But messy continuation beats clean, restarts every time. Now let's talk about the lie that keeps people quitting. They believe momentum is fragile. They think, I broke the streak, it's ruined. No, momentum isn't fragile. Identity is. You didn't lose momentum. You lost self-trust. And self-trust is rebuilt only one way. By returning, not by planning, not by motivating, by showing up again. Now let's talk about winners. From the outside, they look consistent. From the inside, they're not. They miss. They struggle. They doubt. What you don't see is how fast they return. They don't turn one bad day into a verdict. They don't narrate failure. They don't spiral. They resume. Quitters turn misses into meaning. I always do this. I'm not disciplined. I ruin everything. That meaning kills the habit. Winners don't add meaning. They treat misses as logistics. No emotion, no story, just correction. Now let's talk about the middle phase. This is where the habit matters most. Not the start, not the finish, the middle. The middle is boring, unrewarded, unnoticed. That's where quitting happens. Not because people don't care, but because they expect progress to feel different. They think effort should feel motivating. It doesn't. It feels dull. And dull effort is where winners separate. They don't need excitement to continue. They only need a rule. I don't stop. Not I don't fail. I don't stop. That rule changes everything. Now let's talk about the psychology of quitting. Quitting is rarely intentional. It's passive. You don't decide to quit. You just don't return. You wait. You delay. You tell yourself tomorrow. Then tomorrow becomes later. Later becomes never. And you never consciously quit. You just drifted. Winners don't drift. They interrupt drift by returning immediately, even at low intensity, especially at low intensity. Now let's talk about why restarting is seductive. Restarting gives you the illusion of control. You feel proactive. You feel renewed. But restarting resets the habit loop. It erases accumulated tolerance. Returning preserves it. Returning teaches your nervous system something critical. We don't disappear when it gets uncomfortable. That lesson is powerful. It compounds. Over time, resistance loses its threat because your brain has proof. You always come back. Now let's talk about discipline. People think discipline is intensity. It's not. Discipline is speed of return. How fast you resume after disruption. That's the metric. Not how hard you go on good days, but how quickly you show up after bad ones. Winners return within hours, or a day. Quitters take weeks, or months, or forever. Now let's talk about self-respect. Self-respect is not feeling proud. It's trusting yourself. Trust comes from predictability. If you know you'll return no matter what, trust forms. If you don't, anxiety grows. Most people feel anxious not because they're lazy, but because they don't trust their future behavior. Returning fixes that. Now let's talk about identity. Quitters see themselves as someone trying. Winners see themselves as someone who resumes. Trying is optional. Resuming is not. That identity removes drama. It removes negotiation. It removes self-attack. Now let's talk about the real cost of quitting. It's not lost progress. It's learned helplessness. Every time you quit, you reinforce a pattern. When it gets uncomfortable, I leave. That pattern follows you everywhere. Work, health, relationships. Winners build the opposite pattern. When it gets uncomfortable, I return. That pattern creates resilience automatically. Now let's talk about fear. Fear of failure. Fear of judgment. Fear of wasted effort. Returning confronts all of it. Quitting avoids it. That's why quitting feels easier, and why it costs more later. Now let's talk about the false belief behind quitting. If I can't do it perfectly, I shouldn't do it at all. That belief is lethal. Winners reject it. They accept ugly consistency. They accept low energy effort. They accept imperfect days. Because imperfect days stack. Perfect plans don't. Now let's talk about timing. Most people quit right before adaptation kicks in, right before the nervous system calms, right before the skill stabilizes, right before the habit automates. They leave because discomfort spikes. That spike is adaptation. Winners stay through it. Quitters interpret it as a warning. Now let's talk about boredom again. Boredom is the test, not excitement. Boredom asks, will you continue without novelty? Winners say yes. Quitters chase new starts. Now let's talk about why this habit is invisible. Because returning isn't impressive. Nobody praises it. Nobody posts about it. There's no applause for showing up quietly after you failed. So most people don't value it. But this habit decides everything. Careers, bodies, skills, confidence. Now let's talk about the harsh truth. You don't need better motivation. You need a faster return time. That's it. Reduce the gap between stopping and resuming. Everything else solves itself. Now let's talk about how this habit is trained. Not with inspiration, with a rule, a simple rule. Never miss twice. Miss once, resume immediately. No compensation. No guilt, no punishment. Just resume. That rule creates winners because it removes quitting as an option. Now let's talk about the emotional shift that happens when you adopt this habit. You stop fearing bad days. Because bad days no longer threaten progress. They just slow it briefly. That creates calm. Calm creates consistency. Consistency creates outcomes. Now let's talk about the quiet confidence this builds. When you know you'll return, you stop panicking about setbacks. You stop overthinking. You stop spiraling. Because the system holds. That's strength, not hype, not confidence talk. Strength. Now let's talk about where you are right now. You've quit before. Everyone has. That's not the issue. The issue is whether you learned the wrong lesson. The lesson is not, I can't stick to things. The lesson is, I didn't return fast enough. That can be fixed today, because knowing the habit is not enough. You need to install it mechanically, without relying on willpower. And once it's installed, quitting stops being your default response. The habit only matters if it's installed, not admired, not understood. Installed. Winners don't rely on willpower to return. They remove the choice not to. That's the secret. They don't ask, do I feel like coming back? They already decided what happens when they slip, before it ever happens. Here's how the return habit is actually built. First, you pre-decide recovery. Quitters decide how to start. Winners decide how to resume. That's the difference. Before you begin anything meaningful, you lock in one rule. When I miss, I resume at the minimum level the very next opportunity. Not when I feel ready. Not after I regroup. Next opportunity. That rule eliminates drama. No analysis. No self-talk. Just action. Second, you make returning easier than restarting. Most people restart because returning feels heavy. So winners strip returning down. When they come back, they don't try to make up for it. No double sessions. No punishment. No intensity. They return small. Embarrassingly small. Why? Because returning is about identity, not output. The goal is not progress that day. The goal is preserving the chain. Third, you remove emotion from the miss. Quitters narrate misses. They tell stories. I always mess this up. I lost momentum. What's the point now? Winners don't narrate. They log. Missed. Resumed. That's it. No meaning. No verdict. Misses are treated like flat tires. You don't question your ability to drive. You fix it and continue. Fourth, you shorten the return window. This is critical. The longer you wait to return, the harder it gets. Guilt grows. Stories grow. Identity erodes. Winners return fast. Same day, if possible. Next day at latest. Speed matters more than intensity. Fast return beats strong restart every time. Fifth, you track returns, not streaks. Streaks are fragile. They shatter easily. Returns are resilient. Winners don't say, how long did I go without missing? They say, how fast did I come back? That metric builds anti-fragility. Now let's talk about why this habit works psychologically. Returning teaches your nervous system one thing. Discomfort doesn't end the process. Once that belief locks in, resistance loses leverage. Fear weakens. Doubt quiets. Because your system knows the outcome. You'll come back. So there's nothing to protect you from. Now let's talk about the moment this habit starts changing your life. It's subtle. You stop panicking when you miss. You stop spiraling. You stop negotiating with yourself. You miss, and something strange happens. You're calm because you already know what's next. Return. That calm is power. Now let's talk about discipline again. Discipline is not daily perfection. It's inevitable resumption. Once resumption is inevitable, quitting disappears. Not emotionally, mechanically. Now let's talk about momentum. Momentum doesn't come from streaks. It comes from unbroken identity. I'm someone who comes back. That identity doesn't shatter when life interferes. It bends, then straightens. That's why winners seem unshakable. They're not stronger. They're just harder to knock out of motion. Now let's talk about confidence. This habit builds real confidence. Not hype, not bravado. Confidence rooted in proof. You've returned before, so you trust yourself. That trust makes future returns easier. This is how the habit compounds. Now let's talk about the hardest moment. The moment after a miss. That's where the battle is won or lost. Quitters think, I ruined it. Winners think, this is the moment that matters. And they act immediately. That single decision, repeated over time, separates outcomes dramatically. Now let's talk about how this habit shows up everywhere. In work, you come back after mistakes. In health, you resume after off days. In learning, you continue after confusion. In relationships, you re-engage after conflict. The habit scales. That's why winners win across domains. They don't disappear. Now let's talk about why most people never build this habit. Because nobody celebrates returns. Nobody praises quiet resumption. The world praises starts, announcements, fresh beginnings. So people chase starts. Winners chase continuation. They don't care what looks good. They care what lasts. Now let's talk about the final piece. You don't need to return to everything. You need to return to one thing consistently. That's how the habit installs. One domain, one practice. Once the return habit is wired there, it transfers. Now the final challenge. This is not symbolic. It's behavioral. Pick one habit you've quit before. One. Restart it today at the lowest possible level. Not impressive, not meaningful, just doable. Then make one rule. If I miss, I return the very next opportunity, no matter how small. No exceptions, no stories, just return. Track only one thing for 30 days. Return time, not streaks, not intensity. Return speed. If this landed, leave a comment with one word, returned, and subscribe if you want more of this. Not motivation, not hype, but the habits that quietly separate winners from everyone who meant to try. Because winners aren't the ones who never fall. They're the ones who never disappear.